Hello, welcome to Lesson 2 of your Audit in CIS environment. In this video, we are going to introduce to you the transaction processing, and our learning objective for this session is to identify the broad objectives of your transaction cycles, the different types of transaction processed by each of the three transaction cycles that you have. So we'll be identifying them, and we'll also be identifying their subsystems. And of course, let's identify your basic accounting records used in the TPS or your transaction processing system, the traditional accounting records and their magnetic equivalents, and your documentation techniques, and lastly, your batch and real-time processing and the impact of these technologies on your transaction processing. All right, last time we were able to start your audit in CIS environment. Let's continue this today. Your transaction processing system or your TPS, let me just open the pen. Ayan. The TPS or your transaction processing system is an activity consisting of three major subsystems. So transaction processing system is an activity consisting of three major subsystems. These major subsystems are also called your transaction cycles. Number one, you have your revenue cycle. You have your number two, expenditure cycle. And lastly, you have your conversion cycle. Okay? Each of them performs a specific task and they support different objectives. However, even though they support different objectives, they share common characteristics. What are those common characteristics? Number one, these three types of TPS cycle capture financial transaction. Okay? All of these systems under your TPS are capturing financial transaction. What else? They record effect of transaction in accounting records. In this topic, usually, if you go back to your financial accounting, what do? Manual record. In this topic, we are inculcating now your automation on your recording of your transaction. Okay? So they share common characteristic. Number one, they capture financial transaction. Number two, you record the effect of the transaction. And number three, they are providing information about transactions to users in support of the day-to-day activities of the company operation. Okay? And of course, you were able to identify already your financial transaction during our previous topic. Again, what's your financial transaction? Financial transaction are transactions affecting your asset, liabilities, and equity. Okay? They are reflected on those accounts and are measured in monetary items. Okay? So, here you go. Expenditure cycle, conversion, and revenue. Again, what are those? Those are the three main subsystems of your transaction processing system. Okay, let us continue. This transaction cycles processes most of the firm's economic activity. Okay, from the expenditure to the conversion until the revenue cycle. And actually, that's also the arrangement. You have number one, the expenditure. So you buy first your material, you get first your supply, and then you put it in the production that's under your conversion already, and then sell it, that's under the revenue cycle already. And of course, since it's a cycle, it's a repetitive process. All right. Now, under your expenditure cycle, take note of your subsystems as well. You have your purchasing or accounts payable, you have your cash disbursement, you have your payroll, and you have your fixed asset. And it is here written down on your screen. All right. How about your conversion cycle? You have two main subsystems only for the conversion, and that is your cost accounting and production planning and control. And lastly, for the revenue cycle, you only have two as well, your sales order processing and your cash receipt. So if you try to notice, it's only expenditure cycle that is composed of four subsystems as well. Okay? So let's try to break it down. You have your TPS, Transaction Processing System. That's broken down into three. That's expenditure cycle, conversion cycle, and the revenue cycle. Let's start with the revenue cycle. You have two. you have sales order processing, and you have your cash receipt. Under the conversion cycle, another two. You have your cost accounting and you have your production, planning, and control. And under your expenditure cycle, you have four. You have your purchasing, you have cash disbursement, you have payroll, and your fixed asset. Okay, so all in all, you have to always remember three main subsystems and further subsystems. You have here 8 further subsystem, 2 for revenue cycle, 2 for conversion, 4 for expenditure cycle. Okay? All right. So before we go to each of the two, am I correct? Two subsystem, okay? There. Let's go first to your expenditure cycle. When you say expenditure cycle, this is the cycle where you have to identify the business activity beginning with the acquisition of the material, property, and then supplies and labor in exchange for cash. These items will now be used for the production processes later on. So let's start with your purchasing. Your purchasing, this system recognizes the need to acquire physical inventory such as your raw material, your supplies for the production, am I correct? And you place an order with the vendor. All right? How about your disbursement system or your cash disbursement system? When the obligation created in the purchases system, the cash disbursement system will now authorize the payment and will now disperse the fund to the vendor, meaning you'll now be paying your accounts payable. For the payroll, on the other hand, this is conceptually more related to the labor. It collects labor usage data for the employee, you compute the payroll, and you disburse paychecks. Or sometimes, in terms of disbursement, you can use automated teller machine. Diba? Diretso sa ATM ng employee mo yan. Next, you have your fixed asset. Your fixed asset, this is more of your capital expenditure. So the system is processing transactions pertaining to acquisition, maintenance, and disposal of your fixed or your permanent asset. On the other hand, your conversion cycle is containing your two subsystems, the production system and the cost accounting system. Okay? So your conversion cycle is mainly concerned with the conversion or from the raw material to the work in process until the finished goods of your inventory. So this is more applicable when you have a manufacturing firm. Okay? Next, you have your revenue cycles. When the firm sells their finished goods, of course, to the customer, or when they sell their services, you now have or you go through the revenue cycle. That involves the processing of cash sale, your credit sale, and the receipt of your cash after the credit sale or after collecting your ARs. Okay? So when you talk about your sales order processing, the majority of the business sales are now made on credit, and so they need to have a system that will process their sales order in terms of their credit sale. So number one, they have to identify, is this an active customer? Next, is this or can we authorize sale on account to this customer? Those are some of the items that you do under the sales order processing. Next is your sales receipt or your cash receipt system. For credit sale, some period of time, let's say there are days or weeks that passes between the point of sale until your cash receipt. So the cash receipt processing includes the collecting of cash, depositing of cash in the bank, and recording of this event. Now, what is our concern here? Our concern is that when you do the audit, you are trying or you will try to look if there is appropriate control measure here. Meaning, is the person collecting the cash also the one depositing the cash? Or is there someone depositing the cash aside from the person collecting it? And of course, is the person collecting it doing the record? Because if so, you have a weak control measure because the recording should be separate from the cash custodianship. Okay? Or the cash collection, because there can be a fraud perpetrated if the person collecting is also the person recording. Why? Because if she collected 100,000, she can do or she can perpetrate a fraud. How? She will only be recording 90,000 collection and will keep the 10,000 on her pocket. Okay? So we will be tackling those one as we go on with the different transaction cycles. Okay. Now, in each cycle, there are two subsystems. Kindly take note, two subsystems. We are talking about your physical component and your financial component. When you say physical component, let's go to your expenditure. You have your acquisition of goods. That's your physical component. And the financial component is the cash disbursement to the supplier. Okay? This is quite literal because you just have to identify which is the physical component, which the financial. When you say financial, it's either you pay or you receive cash. Okay? That's the same with your revenue cycle if you try to notice. Your physical component is your sales order processing, delivery of your order, and your financial component is your cash receipt. Okay? The only different is the conversion cycle because you have the production system, that's the planning, scheduling, and control, and you have your cost accounting system, which monitors the flow of your cost information. Okay. Next, we now go to your accounting records. Originally, okay, in the world of accounting, you only have manual. But since there's already your information technology, you now have automated accounting system. Meaning, you still do your work as a bookkeeper or as an accountant, but of course, there's already the help of your accounting systems already. All right. So let us start with the different items that you have for your manual accounting system. You have your source document. Your source document is used to capture and formalize the transaction. Okay, what's the sample of this one? You have your receipt. It will capture and formalize the transaction by providing your customer that customer, you were able to purchase from me this item at this amount. So that is the proof as well of the customer's purchase and the proof of your sale. Okay? Next is your product document. It is the result of the transaction processing. From the source document, which is your raw data per se, if you process it, okay, and you create an information out of that process, let us say you created an information regarding the total GL account of, let us say, of your customer A. Okay? The GL account generated on the system could be one of the product documents or a result of the transaction processing. Okay? Now, when you have the turnaround documents, these are documents that become information to you and the source of information of another department. Let us say for HR, okay? In HR, they get the information regarding labor hour usage. Now, they are going to collect those, summarize, and then they have now the information. That information of them goes to the accounting or let us say to the finance for the payroll processing, assuming it is under the accounting that the payroll processing is done aside from the HR. So the information created by HR is actually a data for accounting, and that's what you call a turnaround document. The information created by the HR system will go to the accounting system, that is their source document, so they can compute the payroll amount or the amount of wages to be paid to your labor force. Okay? So that is your turnaround document. Again, your source document are used to capture and formalize transaction in the transaction cycle processing. Next one, you have your product documents. These are the result of transaction processing rather than triggering mechanism of the process. And of course, you have your turnaround. These are the product documents of one system that become source document of another. Now, let's go to your recording. Okay? In your manual accounting records as well as in your automated records, this is always present. You have your journal or your book of original entry and your ledger or your book of final entry. Okay? So can you still remember those items mentioned during your accounting 101? Journal entry, your journal is the book of original. Okay? So if I ask you in the quiz, your journal is also called blank. You should know that it is the book of your original entry. And of course, this is the book of your final entry. Under your journal, you have two types of your journal, okay? Your special journal and your general journal. By the way, what do you do on your journal? You record your transaction in a chronological order. Meaning, the first transaction that happened during the year is the first one to be recorded on your journal. And the last transaction that happened during the month, let us say January 31, that's also the last thing that you'll see on your journal, okay? You do not arrange that like, let's say, oh, this is all purchases. Okay, this is all sales. No, you do not do it that way. Okay? For those organizations of those journals, you do it on the ledger because in the ledger, you now start classifying and posting, meaning whatever journal entry made for the cash account, you only post it on this specific ledger. Okay? So for the special journal, this is a specific class of transaction that occur in high frequency. What's an example of this? Let's say your sales. In a grocery store, okay, assuming you're just a small grocery store, and what is the high frequency transaction? Your sale. So you'll have most likely a special journal only for your sale. For the general journal, you can do like a journal entry for your purchases, a journal entry for the payment of your rent, journal entry for the payment of your labor force. That's what you do in your journal entry. And the journal entry is usually for non-recurring or infrequent journal entry. Okay? Next, you have your ledger. Oops. Your ledger is showing the summary of all the transactions of your company. And of course, it is on a per account basis. So your ledger is the book of accounts that reflects financial effect of the firm's transaction after they are posted from the various journal. Number one, you have your general ledger. Your general ledger is summarizing the activity of each organization's account. The general ledger department updates this record. Sometimes you do not have a separate general ledger department, you just have it in the accounting department. And of course, you have subsidiary ledger. What's the role of your subsidiary ledger? Your subsidiary ledger are kept in various accounting departments of the firm. And the purpose is that so you can identify, let us say you have various customers. So for each customer, you wanted to monitor, oh, how frequent is customer A buying from us? Or how frequent is customer B getting a discount? You can identify that on the subsidiary ledger of your customer A. So you have sales, customer A. Okay? All right. So additional information, you have here what you call your register. When you say register, it is used to denote a certain type of special journal. So that's for a special journal, you use the word register. Okay? Now, let's try to look a sample of the flow of an economic event into the general ledger. Number one, you have your customer order. Okay? You now get or you now do your sales order. You post it on your accounts receivable subsidiary ledger. That could be a subsidiary ledger of a separate or a certain customer. At the same time, you do your journal entry, and that is on the sales journal. Okay, sales journal because as mentioned earlier, your sales transaction is one of the most frequent transactions, so most likely you have a special journal for that. So upon journalizing, so everything is journalized already, you can now post it to the general ledger of your sales account. All right? And of course, periodically, you try to reconcile these two items, your AR receivable subsidiary ledger and your general ledger. Later on, we'll also be tackling the different functions of these drawings or this item on your flow charts. Okay. Now we go to your audit trail. What is audit trail? Okay. In accounting records described on the previous slides that we have, okay, you are providing an audit trail for tracing transaction from source documents to the financial statements, okay? So your audit trail are serving as the guide to the auditors on how, where, and who are trying to access or how is your document flowing into the system. They are providing the guide to your auditor, okay? And of course, your accountant should be able to trace both direction, okay? So may that be forward, backward, in this direction. So from Department A, it goes to Department B. After Department B, does it go back to A or does it proceed to Department C? So that is one of the uses of your audit trail. Okay? So that is for the tracing of the order of your events. Now, an example of your tracing an audit trail is verifying your accounts receivable. Okay? You have here your AR control and general ledger. You go back to your subsidiary ledger and then you review all the sales journal and as well as your cash receipt journal. Going to the ordinary or original, I should say, original transaction data, which is your sales order or shipping notice and your remittance advice. That is to prove that there is sale that really happened. Or that's also to prove that this is the amount that should be recorded on your sales or for that specific sale. Okay? Now, in accounting and of course in audit, we now have your computer-based system. And of course, the audit trail is less observable in computer-based system because of course you cannot truly see. Okay, you cannot completely see the flow. Unlike in a manual system, when you know that from purchasing it goes to your treasury, then it goes to your accounting, well and good, you'll be able to see or you'll have a bird's eye view of the true flow of your transaction or let's say of a certain document. So from the receiving, where does it go? In a computer-based system, the auditor and the accountant has to understand and has to learn about the system that you use in order for you to provide an audit trail. Okay? And the data entry and computer programs are now physical trail. And of course, the data are stored in magnetic files, meaning you now have a computerized system. Now we go to your different types of files or your computer files. Let us start with your master file. When you say master file, this is generally containing an account data. You have the general ledger and subsidiary ledger as examples of your master file. So what's your example? General and subsidiary ledger. Okay? The data values in the master file are updated from the transaction. So when you do a transaction, when you try to record, it automatically updates your master file. Next, you have your transaction file. The transaction file is a temporary file containing the transaction since the last update. So what's your clue here? When you say transaction, it's just a temporary file. What's some of your examples here? You have sales order, inventory receipt, your cash receipt. Okay? Next, you have your reference file. When you say reference file, it stores data that are used as standard for processing transaction. They are used as storage or they store data used in the standards of transact or processing a transaction. A good example would be your payroll program, okay? Like your tax table. You have your tax table that can be used for reference in computing the tax payable or tax due of the employee. Your customer addresses. If you wanted to do house visit, where do you get it? From the reference file. What else? If you wanted to contact or email one of your employees, you wanted to update them or you just wanted to, let's say, provide them email, where do you get their email? You do not have to tap them one by one. You can just have it from the reference file. And of course, your archive file contains record of past transactions. So your clue here is past transaction and are retained for future references. So let us say you have a former employee. So that former employee resigned, but then she reapplied. Okay, after 1 year, she reapplied. Some of the information that you need may be on the archive files already. So you just have to retrieve it back. Maybe, aside from retrieving it back, you would like to ask that new employee again or that returning employee to just update you with some of the information. Okay, so that's the role of your archive files. Now, what are your different documentation techniques? Okay, you have here your documentation in computer-based environment, which is necessary for many reasons. Of course, number one is for audit. And of course, what are the different common documentation techniques, you have your entity relation diagram. Oops. You have your entity relation diagram. You have your data flow diagram, document flow chart, system flow chart, and program flow chart. Okay. Most items that are used here are these 4 items. Okay. Later on, maybe you'll be asked to do your own data flow diagram. We'll see. Okay. We'll see. So let us start. Do we have here the entity relation diagram? Your entity relation diagram is a documentation technique that represents relationship between entities in a system. Meaning, let us say from one department to another department or department 1 to department 2. It is identifying or it is representing the relationship between your department 1 and department 2. That's your entity resource diagram. And of course, there are 3 types of entities here. You have the resource, the events, and the agents. Okay? And this is under the RHEA model of your ERD. But that will be tackled on later. So you have here your cardinalities. It represents the numerical mapping between the entities. It can be 1-to-1, meaning if it's a ratio, there's only one that is corresponding to 1. Next, 1 can correspond to many items, okay? And of course, your many items could correspond to your different items, okay? So you have a lot of correspondence here. That's your cardinalities. All right. Next, we go to your data flow diagram. By the way, under your entities are the physical resources. You have your events, and of course, you have your agents. That's why you have here the 3 items. That's your physical entities, okay? Again, the resources, events, and agents are called your physical entities. So, I almost forgot. Anyway, let's proceed with your next one, data flow diagram. Your data flow diagram are using symbols to represent entity, your processes, data flow, and data stores that pertain to a certain system. Okay? Again, they represent your processes, data sources, data flow, and entities in a system. And they represent a logical element of the system, meaning the order is in a logical basis, and of course, they do not represent a physical system. Okay? They are representing your computerized system already. So you have here some of the data flow diagram symbols. If you have this symbol, it means you have an entity name. If you have this symbol, okay, you have your process description. What do you do here in your entity name? You input source or output destination of data. So it's either an input source, okay, input source, or output destination. How about your data stores? Okay? Your data stores or data stores name, okay, will store data such as your transaction file, master file, or a reference file. And of course, all known by you, you have the direction of the data flow. This one is, of course, the process that is triggered or supported by the data. So from this data, what process is triggered? You have your process description. All right. Next, we have your document flow chart. Your document flow chart represents the relationship among the processes and the document that flow between them. Your document flow chart is providing you the tracing on how the document is flowing from one department to another. Let us say from the HR, you have a certain document. Where does it go next? Does it go to your accounting? And after the accounting, where does it go? It goes back to the HR for file. That's possible. Okay? Or let us say after the accounting, it goes to your treasury. After the treasury, it go back to accounting and back to your HR for file. Okay, it's only talking about the certain document. And of course, that is containing more details than your data flow diagram. And of course, it will clearly depict the separation of function in the system because if you have a certain document, let us say that is a credit transaction, regarding a credit transaction, you have to approve a credit transaction of your customer. In terms of approval, in terms of signing, in terms of receiving, in terms of journalizing, those are different functions and that should not be done by only one person or only two person. Okay? So that is the essence of your document flow chart. Next, for your document flow chart, here are some of your symbols. You have, sometimes this is yeah, correct. This is the correct item for your terminal flow showing source or destination of document. This one is the one of the items that is frequently used, one of the items or signs frequently used. You have your source document or your report. You have the manual operation. That's an example of your manual operation. Let's say recording of your labor time. That's a manual operation. What else? Um, you can also do manual operation of collecting all the items of your labor force. What else? Summarizing the time consumed for this week of your labor force. Okay. Next, you have the triangle. The triangle represents file for storing source document and your reports. Okay. Sometimes it's in an inverted triangle. How about your parallelogram? Your parallelogram is depicting your accounting records, meaning you have your journal, your ledger, your register, your logbooks, okay? So any accounting records that you use. Next, you have this item here, meaning calculated batch total. And of course, your page connector, let us say this is your paper. You are presenting your flowchart. If the flowchart is not already enough, you wanted to connect it to the next page, meaning if you open the next page, that's just a continuation of what is in front of the first page, meaning it is not a new system or not a new flow of your document. Next, off-page connector. Next, you have the description of process or the documents. And of course, the data flow line. Where does the document or the data goes next? So we have here a sample. The first stage in constructing the document flow chart is showing the areas of activity, meaning you have an activity that's done by the sales department, credit department, warehouse, and the shipping. The next one is to now identify what specific activity, document, and processes they do. So you have here the interrelationship as well. Let's have here, you start with the customer, that's the start of the transaction. You go to your customer order. You now prepare the sales order, meaning this is a manual process. Your sales order are produced in how many copies? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first copy goes to your credit department. The other copy is stored or is in the file. Next, what happens after the sales order goes to your credit department? You check credits. This is another manual activity. Okay, and then of course, if it's done, you now sign the sales order. So the signed sales order proceeds to the distribution of your sales order and your file. Okay, and of course, you have here your sales orders. So, and so on, so forth. Of course, until the shipping. So if you try to notice your sales order 2 goes to the shipping or to the warehouse, I should say, to pick the goods. That's a manual process. You stock the records. So you have to do your records. Let us say you deduct number of inventory from your records or you do the journal entry. And then you have here your sales order, which will go to the process of picking up of goods because they need your sales order as the reference as well. And of course, your end process is again present, which is the customer after receiving the goods. So that's just a sample of your data flow chart. Am I correct? Okay. You have next your system flow chart here. So for your system flow chart, this is used to represent the relationship between the key elements, your input, your program, your output, the products, and the computer system itself. So it is representing the entire system. It's a flow chart for the entire system. That's your system flow chart. Okay? In the system flow chart, you are having a graphical representation of the physical relationship. Again, physical relationship among the key elements in the system. Okay? So some of the symbols in your system flow chart is here as well. Number 1, you have your hard copy items. Number 2, for a rectangle sign, that means you have a computer process or you will run a program. Okay? How about this one, your cylindrical drawing? Okay? You have a direct access storage or disk pack. Next, you have your magnetic tape. This is for sequential storage device. You have your terminal input or output device. Of course, you have your process flow, real-time or online connection, and of course, video display device. That's just some of the items and most frequently used in your system flow chart. So again, you have here a sample just like what we have on your data flow chart. All right. Only that, if you try to notice, of course, the different items, especially the symbols or the signs, are now different because what you are trying to show is the relationship among the physical components in the company or in the system. Next, you have your program flow chart. Your program flow chart shows the relationship between the computer program, the files that they use, and the output that they produce. And they are illustrated in the logical order as used in the program. Again, your program flow chart is showing the relationship between your program or your computer program, the files that they use, and the output that they produce. Okay? And this is a high-level documentation, but it does not provide your operational details that are sometimes needed. So that's one of the drawbacks of your program flowchart. They do not provide operational details. Okay? So some of the program flowchart symbols are presented here. You have your logical process. That's for the rectangle. So again, you have to identify. In terms of your system flowchart, what does the rectangle mean? Okay? If you try to go back, your rectangle means computer process. Is it the same with your program flowchart? Yes, it's almost the same. It's representing a logical process. Next one, what's different in your program flowchart is you have a diamond sign. And this represents the decision. Of course, the arrow is similar in all types of flowcharts or diagram. Next, your parallelogram, input or output operation, and the oblong sign you have, or the oval sign, I should say, you have terminal start and the end of operation, just like what we have earlier. Your terminal start is your customer and your customer is also the end of the operation because that's really the end after the customer receives the order. Okay? So in tracing flowchart downward from the start symbol, you will be able to see how the program performs in a logical step. Okay? That's your program flow chart. Now you have your modern system versus your legacy system. So your modern system is client-server based. How about your legacy system or legacy system characteristic? It is mainframe-based application and it is batch-oriented. Your modern system, you have the use of your relational database table. It has a high degree of process integration, meaning in a certain system, you can now process different types of transaction. In the legacy system, you only use flat file for storage. And it is so hard to do different steps in a single system, or it is hard, or it is not yet, or the integration is not yet present in your legacy system. And of course, you can do data sharing under the modern system, but in your legacy system, you promote single user environment. Okay? Meaning they are discouraging integration. Okay? So in terms of your database backup procedure, destructive updates leaves no backup. Next, to preserve adequate records, backup procedure must be implemented as shown below. How do you create an adequate records? The master file being updated and copied as a backup, and of course, a recovery plan or program uses the backup to create a pre-update version of the master file. Later on, we will also be tackling your batch and real time. Okay, there. Speaking of your batch and real time, under the computer-based accounting system, okay, you have your two broad classes of system. You have your batch system and your real-time system. Your batch system assembles transaction into groups for processing. Okay? Under this approach, or under the batch system approach, there is always a time lag between the point at which the economic event occurs and the point at which they are reflected in the account. Meaning there is a time lag. So let us say today, I recorded this transaction, or this transaction happened and I immediately recorded it. After some time, or after let us say 6 hours, that's the time that the transaction will be appearing on the account. So it's just after 6 hours. Whereas if you have real time, you process transaction individually at the moment in time, or at the moment the event occurs, and the records are not grouped into batches, meaning there is no time lags. Itong batch mo kasi, it means that if you have a lot of sales today, what is the date today? Today is September 15. If it is September 15 today, you first collect all your transactions today, and then your computer will take time to process all those transactions before they are reflected on the different accounts. That's what you have under the batch processing. There is a time lag that is existing between the event and the processing. Whereas in your real-time system, again, as you do your items or your transaction, as the event transaction occurs, you do the recording, and then the recording is there. It appears real time. Let us say today you have your internet with you and your system is run by the internet connection. So as you do your transaction, it is already reported or recorded and forwarded to your different accounts. Okay? So before we go to the steps in your batch, there. What is the advantages of your batch? Number one, increase in efficiency by grouping large number of transactions into batches rather than processing each event separately. That's one of the advantages of batch, although there is a time lag. Okay? Next, under batch processing, you provide control over the transaction via control figures. Okay. So you have real time, you process as the economic event occurs, no time lag, but it requires greater resources. And of course, it will be very tedious for you. Why? Because every time you have a transaction, you have to record it, you have to update the system. Oftentimes, longer system development of times. Okay? And of course, let's have a brief differentiation of your batch and your real time. Under your batch, again, in terms of your information time frame, there is a time lag existing between the economic event and the recording. Under real time, the processing takes place when the economic event occurs or when the economic event happens. As to the resource, your batch generally have fewer resources, whereas your real time, more resources are required in order to process, okay? Rather than or aside or compared to, I should say, compared to your batch. In terms of operational efficiency, of course, since you do the recording one and all for your batch, you maintain or you have greater efficiency. Whereas in real time, all records or all transaction recording pertaining to event are processed immediately. Okay? So let's say if you have sales as of now, right now, you have to record it now, to date, okay, as of the moment. Whereas in batch, you can wait until the day ends before you do the recording and the processing of your information. So why do many AIS use batch processing? Because AIS processing is characterized by high volume. So since it's a high volume and every day, instead of sitting down in front of the computer or in front of the system, doing every transaction or recording every transaction that happens, the AIS, they do it in a batch processing type, okay? And the processing of high volume checks can be done during an off-peak computer time, and one reason why batch may be done using real-time data collection. Oh, that's the end of our topic already. So again, do not forget your legacy system versus your modern system, your batch versus your real time. What else? Your different transaction cycles, the different subsystems of your transaction cycles. Of course, the different documents, the different data flow diagrams and flow charts, and of course, your journal, your ledger, and the different subsystems of your transaction processing. Going back, you have your revenue cycle composed of two subsystems. You have your conversion cycle, another two subsystem, and your expenditure cycle for subsystem. So you have an activity later or a quiz, so you might be asked of those questions. So see you again on our next session for the next topic.